everyone, and welcome back to another video on Fatdoctoruk. So this is only going to be a shorter one, 30-ish minutes up to 45, and we're just going to start with where we left off.
So whether you believe that being fat causes diabetes or if it's the other way around, whether you believe that losing weight will prevent diabetes or not, surely everybody agrees that fat people are more likely to die from diabetes than thin people. I mean, surely nobody would dare to disagree with this statement, except for these guys. This study is taken from the Journal of the American Medical Association from 2012.
Okay, so it says, we're going to just back up slightly. Association of weight status with mortality in adults with incident diabetes. This was a free article from 2012. This is from February of this year, meaning that this is 10 years old. So anything that is given by it, like, it's not that it's automatically false or anything, but there's probably been more articles published. There's probably been more studies published on this since then. We won't be looking at any of those today because my university has this new two-step authentication program, my alma mater does, and I have to download this special app on my phone, which I haven't done yet because I need to clear out space. Like, it's this big thing that I have to do. So we're not going to be looking at extra studies today. I can probably find this, though, if I wanted to, but given that they're not using it as any sort of real argument for their cause, I'm just going to let it be for today. Using this to get upset about this 10-year-old study, I don't even need to really look at the study. I can just say, I think you have too much time on your hands. You're a doctor. Surely you have access to more recent articles.
From 2012. It compared type 2 diabetic patients with a quote-unquote normal weight compared to quote-unquote overweight and obese. They pulled together the analysis of 5 longitudinal cohort studies, 2,625 participants in total, and found without a shadow of a doubt that adults who were normal weight at the time of diabetes incidence experienced higher mortality than adults who were overweight or quote-unquote obese at their diabetes incidence. Check out these hazard ratios.
So I was wrong. For some reason, I did not clue into exactly where she was or where they were going with that. So they were trying to say, look at this. This proves that people of a normal weight experience worse things with diabetes, therefore I get the implicit conclusion there is that being overweight with diabetes is better than being a normal weight with diabetes, but they are still using a 10-year-old study for this. And it would take me like 45 minutes just to get my two-step authentication done through the university, or I would look up other studies, but for today we're just going to leave it. I'm sure we'll have more opportunities later.
So when a fat person is diagnosed with diabetes, what's the first thing you're told to do? Lose some weight, obviously. And that's clinically proven to benefit people with diabetes, right? Definitely doesn't harm them.
Weight loss increases mortality in overweight or obese. I'm guessing that's patients with diabetes.
Yeah. Mortality in fat patients with diabetes? That can't be right. But this meta-analysis from 2018 says differently. They looked at 18,887 patients from 8 different trials, and they compared people with a stable weight and people who lost weight.
So it says there were 1,652 studies identified. 8 met the inclusion criteria, with a total of 18,887 patients were included in this analysis. We found that compared with stable weight loss was associated with an increase of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease. So, with an increased risk of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease. So, to me, I wish I could read what was behind their head. But to me, that would also say that the increased weight loss, perhaps the patients didn't consult a doctor, because if it was an increase in all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease.
And what they found was that if you lost weight in diabetes, you had a significantly higher risk of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular mortality. But wait, there's more. Weight gain was not associated with an increase in any form of mortality. So if you're a diabetic, not only is weight loss impossible, it's bad for you.
Oh my God, not only is it impossible, but it's bad for you. I want to see the name of that study, see if we can at least get the abstract for it. Weight loss increases all-cause mortality in overweight or obese patients with diabetes. Okay, so this is in fact a meta-analysis from August of 2018, so it's about 5 years old. It says it's a free PMC article, but we only get the abstract. But we'll go ahead and read through the abstract for now. Overweight and obese patients with diabetes are advised to lose weight to improve their health. However, recent studies have demonstrated that weight loss may be associated with worse long-term survival in patients with diabetes. The meta-analysis aimed to examine the relationships between weight loss and all-cause mortality in overweight or obese individuals with diabetes. Methods. So they searched 2 different databases from inception to February 2017. So if they looked from inception, the articles that they could be referencing could be from like the 1950s. So like, it's cited by what did they cite is my question. So let's see all 37 references. This isn't going to be perfect because from inception to February 2017, and they had used PubMed and Embase databases. And then this has since been cited in physical performance and glycemic control, patients with type 2 established. So it looks like there's a weight change and risk of cardiovascular disease among adults with type 2 diabetes, more than 14 years of follow-up in the Tehran lipid and glucose study. So that might be worth just taking a look at in a second, but I want to see what was referenced. So, association with weight status. So this was one of the ones that Fatdoctoruk had referred to, which was from 2012. Let's see. Intensive lifestyle intervention. This was from 2013. Intentional weight loss and all-cause mortality. Meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials was from 2015. Weight change in all-cause mortality in older adults. Another meta-analysis from 2015. Which means I don't think that they use the meta-analyses in their analysis, because that would be too many steps removed. So it would likely be at least these 2, the 2012 and the 2013 study. It's hard to say there's 31 references here, so it's hard to say exactly which ones they took, but the results of the 1,652 studies identified 8 met the inclusion criteria. A total of 18,887 patients were included in the analysis. We found compared to a stable weight loss was associated with increased risk of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease in overweight and obese adults with diabetes, whereas intentional weight loss... Wait. We found that compared with a stable weight loss was associated with increased risk of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease mortality in overweight and obese adults with diabetes, whereas intentional weight loss was not associated with changes in all-cause mortality. So, oh my god, I wish I'd read this first. Okay, so they're referring to unintentional weight loss when they're saying that there was an increase in all-cause mortality, because because let's face it, weight loss is a sign of like diabetes complications. Like, it's one of the things that you're supposed to look out for in diabetes, and if their diabetes isn't controlled well, then that unintentional weight loss is probably a sign of something more significant. Intentional weight loss was not associated with changes in all-cause mortality. Weight gain was not associated in changes in all-cause mortality. So intentional weight loss and weight gain were not associated with changes in all-cause mortality. It does seem like intentional weight loss might have been also included in changes in cardiovascular disease mortality, but that would make sense if the people had heart conditions and then tried too strenuous an exercise. Like, that would make sense. But for all-cause mortality, there was no changes associated with intentional weight loss. So that increase in all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease mortality was associated with just general weight loss, which could have been from anything. So this conclusion, our results indicate that weight loss but not weight gain increased all-cause mortality and CVD mortality in overweight and obese adults with diabetes, doesn't even, that conclusion, that TLDR conclusion, doesn't even really take in the scope of what's said in the results, because the TLDR of the results suggests that the weight loss was associated with all-cause mortality and CVD mortality. And then they say, whereas intentional weight loss was not associated with changes in all-cause mortality. So this, like, I'm guessing that Fatdoctoruk just basically looked at the conclusion. I mean, they did highlight this thing in their TikTok, but it's clear that they just didn't read further, I guess, and they looked for weight gain immediately after. Very interesting. So we don't even have to take a look at the other stuff, because it says right here that intentional weight loss was not associated with increase in all-cause mortality. So there we go.
With regards to whether intentional weight loss is good for type 2 diabetes, let's look at one of the only two papers in the previous meta-analysis that I quoted that show that
This is from 2004. And I find it interesting that you're only taking it from the previous meta-analysis that you cited, when the meta-analysis itself states that intentional weight loss, and here's the thing, they can't say that this study also said intentional weight loss, because it didn't. It directly addresses intentional weight loss and says that it does not cause an increase in all-cause mortality. So instead, they're trying to cherry pick from one of the references that's from 2004, rather than looking at a more recent article that I'm sure that they have access to.
Intentional weight loss is good for you. First of all, it agreed that when it comes to all forms of weight loss, the more you lose, the more dangerous it is, which is unsurprising because unintentional weight loss is never a good thing. It does indeed say that there is a 23% lower mortality rate for those intentionally trying to lose weight, but it doesn't matter whether the person succeeded in losing weight or not. Furthermore, weight gainers didn't have any increase in mortality rate, and the decrease in mortality rate only applied to overweight individuals, not to people with a BMI of over 30. So we need to ask...
So question though about that, because of the way that's phrased. With the intentional weight loss, were some of the people in the obese category moved to the overweight category, and then when looking at the data, they were applied to the overweight category instead of the obese category? I'm just wondering, and I love how they gloss over the 23% mortality reduction from trying to intentionally lose weight. And then they try to say this like gotcha thing of it didn't matter whether they had successfully lost weight or not. No, because what matters is the lifestyle changes. Like, losing weight definitely does help, but if you've reached like a stagnant point in your weight loss, but you're continuing the healthy behaviors, yeah, that's going to have a positive impact on your health. Like, what?
Ask ourselves, is it weight loss that benefits diabetes, or is it the change in lifestyle? Those are two completely different things.
They're not completely different. They are very much correlated. Having healthier lifestyle changes often leads to weight loss. That's a well-known thing. So chances are they had shown some health-promoting behaviors, maybe not enough to lose the weight, but at least some health-promoting behaviors that led to that reduction in mortality. Now, my question is that if they had increased those healthy behaviors and it resulted in weight loss, how much more lowered mortality rate would that have been? Again, though, this is a 2004 study. I'm sure there's more recent ones.
So if you've been rather surprised by some of the studies that I've presented over the last couple of days, you might be asking yourself, why are we telling everybody to lose weight in diabetes when clearly there's no evidence to support this? So as a doctor, we use the National Institute for Clinical Excellence as a source.
When clearly there's no evidence to support this, oh my god! Even with that study that you cited, it said that those pursuing intentional weight loss had a 23% reduction in mortality, and the weight loss leading to higher levels of mortality that you cited was not the whole story, and it was like the unintentional weight loss, which typically means something's fucking wrong. So no evidence. You referenced it just in the last TikTok.
About guidance, and this is their webpage on risk factors for type 2 diabetes. Notice that the guidelines are based on the Diabetes UK 2019 conference. Who or what is Diabetes UK? Well, it's the National Diabetes Charity. Let's take a look at who funds the charity, shall we? Oh, look, it's a whole bunch of drug companies. What a surprise! See this one in the middle? No, they know all this. Let's see what Diabetes UK has to say about them. The original scale of the programme's impact has been outstanding and inspired us to develop new projects together that potentially transform diabetes care. 2007, we have grown our partnership significantly. Together we deliver. Who funded the 2019 Diabetes UK conference? So, if you've been rather surprised by some of the studies that I've presented over the last couple of days, you might be asking yourself,
I'm not going to get into that. There is some issue. I can acknowledge there is some issue with doctors being paid to promote certain medications to their patients, and there's actually a whole website devoted to you being able to look up your doctor and see what payments and stuff that they've taken from companies in regards to like their medications to promote, like, do they get a kickback for how many prescriptions they write for that medication. That is a concern and that is an issue. I just don't think this is as much of a gotcha as they think it is. Like, they even presented just in the previous TikTok evidence that shows at least attempting to lose weight results in a lowered mortality risk.
a lot of people like to compare smoking with...
So the little comment that it's captioning is, genuine question, can't the same be said about smoking, yet we accept smoking is bad for health. Why is weight different?
Being fat, because supposedly both are bad for your health. And there's two things I want to say here. First of all, smoking is a behaviour, weight is not. You can change...
Weight is largely influenced by behaviors, though, so that argument doesn't really stand.
Your behaviour, you can't change your weight. 95% of people who intentionally try to lose weight regain the weight. Weight is not something that we have control of over the long term, unlike smoking, which we do. The other major difference is that smoking...
So I take it that Fatdoctoruk has never been a smoker. I've never been a smoker either, but I've grown up around smokers, and this idea that smoking is a behavior which we can completely control, and we can, but there is like an addiction associated with smoking. There's an addiction to nicotine, just like a lot of overweight and obese people have kind of this addiction to food. So there's a lot of the behaviors that are the same, and there's a lot of like that difficulty breaking that cycle, breaking those behaviors is, I would argue, probably pretty comparable.
It has never been found to be beneficial for the following conditions.
Obesity paradox, increased body mass index is associated with decreased aortic atherosclerosis. From 2017, so at least it's a moderately recent study. Not as recent as I would like, but close enough.
Aortic atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, heart failure, cardiovascular disease, and following a heart attack or a stroke. Neither has been found.
So here's the thing, though. Those studies were all over the board date-wise. The one that I saw, it looked like the earliest one was probably 2009, which, given that this was recorded earlier this year in 2022, that is a, 13-year-old study? Not a great reference. I don't really understand how they did. It's like they find one and just try to pile them up. And I'm sure if you go back to the 1950s or at least the 1970s, I think we've seen ones as early as 1970s from this person, and you just cherry pick the ones that support your argument, yeah, you could have a very big stack, but a lot of it is out of date.
To be beneficial for end-stage renal disease, diabetes, COPD, cancer, and yet there are multiple meta-analyses that show better health outcomes in fat people with these conditions. A lot of people...
So for the obesity patients with cancer, and it's showing better outcomes that they claim, I would need to find that particular, I wonder if they actually referenced cancer specifically, because I'd like to take a look at it. Let's see. Cardiovascular disease. I want to... They reference so many specific things that I'm going to use cancer, because I've had several family members with cancer, and I have at least some background knowledge personally about it that I can kind of give some thoughts on. But I'm not seeing a study related to cancer. I'm seeing a lot of cardiovascular disease, heart failure, and stroke. But when it comes to cancer specifically, even though they haven't referenced that particular cancer survival rates among obesity patients, something is that I think obesity patients tend to go to the doctor more often, so there's more opportunities to catch it. And then there is a little bit to be said about having a bit of extra weight when going through chemo, because chemo causes such significant weight loss a lot of the time. So that could also be a contributing factor, but obesity patients going in to the doctor's office more often are more likely to be checked for cancer and are more likely to find cancer at an earlier stage. That would be my reasoning for why obesity patients survive cancer more often. That would be my guess. Even so, I'm not going to look up all of those. Let's see what the dates were for each of these studies, though. So 2011, 2009, 2012, another 2009, and then that first one from 2017. We're already kind of running short on time, so I'm not going to look at each of these. I'm not really going to look at them, because we've seen the way they cherry pick stuff before. Actually, you know what? I will look at this one since it's the most recent. An obesity paradox, increased BMI is associated with decreased... Okay, so... Alright, and once again, we only have access to the abstract, and I don't really want to delve deeper into that. Right now, we just don't have the time, but we're going to go ahead and give a quick look at this. It's a review from the looks of it. Brodsky et al. Recently reported that there was an unexpected and highly significant inverse correlation between body mass index and atherosclerosis of the aortas of morbidly obese dissidents. In a series of 304 dissidents, 65 of whom were morbidly obese, minimal or no atherosclerosis was seen in 46 of them, versus 20 who had severe atherosclerosis. This obesity paradox was unexpected and raises important questions about the etiology and pathogenesis of atherosclerosis, which will be subject of this commentary. The concept of healthy versus unhealthy adiposity may in part provide an explanation of the obesity paradox. Another factor that will be considered is the possible role of adipokinase. I don't think I pronounced that right, and their genetic determinants that may significantly reduce the risk of developing aortic atherosclerosis in morbidly obese individuals. Considering the marked variability in the pattern and extent of atherosclerosis of the aorta, hemodynamic factors and endothelial cell shear stress may be the most important determinants that might explain the obesity paradox that we have observed. Finally, the possible role of gut microbiota and inflammation as factors in the etiopathogenesis of atherosclerosis will be considered, but their importance is less clear than that of hemodynamic factors. We conclude with the remarkable finding that a 5,300-year-old well-preserved mummy of the Iceman, Otzi, had atherosclerotic disease of a number of major arteries, and the interesting questions this raises. So this is very much, in fact, a review, not a study. That's something worth noting. And what it was is that they found this study from 2016 interesting, and they're kind of going through, and I'm guessing that they also had a number of references, 52 references, so they did their own research to kind of tease out possible reasons why there was this discrepancy. But there is no conclusions necessarily made from this. This seems to be more speculative than anything as to the results found in the Brodsky et al. Study. So this doesn't really prove anything, and one study, while that's interesting, there could have been things. This was like 6 years ago now, so I wonder if this had a follow-up. So this is not like, this is a review. It's not like a gotcha thing. There's no conclusions necessarily being made. So this is the last one we're going to look today, since we're running out of time and this is just meant to be a short video.
The most common question I get asked is, how do I advocate for myself in the doctor's office? And that's a tough question to answer, because first of all, you shouldn't have to advocate for yourself in the doctor's office. Your doctor should be advocating for you. And second of all, there's this huge power imbalance, which makes advocating for yourself that much harder. I'm a doctor myself who is continually campaigning against weight stigma, and yet I struggle to advocate for myself within the doctor's office. And folks, that's why today I have launched the #NoWeigh campaign, helping people to say no to being weight, no to discussing their weight, no to discussing intentional weight loss, and no to being referred to a weight management service. There's loads of resources on the website www.noweigh.org. For example, questions that you can ask your doctor if they're insisting on weighing you. So why not check it out and see what you think? The most common...
So let's go ahead and just check that out real quick, actually. I love the disclaimer here. The website does not provide medical advice. Before using this website for the first time, you must agree to the terms laid out in the medical disclaimer. Very interesting. Campaigning to end medical weight stigma. Say no to weighing scales and BMI, weight-centric healthcare, weight stigma, and weight loss advice. It's fine if you want to talk about being able to advocate for yourself when you want a test done. Let's say that the doctor says that the weight could be your primary issue, and you are convinced that it's this particular thing that you can get tested for. One of the things that I've seen was celiac disease. And I don't think it was necessarily related to weight loss, but the person was getting frustrated with their doctor that kept suggesting other things. And once they talked with their friend who recognized their symptoms as part of celiac, they went and they said they wanted a celiac panel. Doctor said no at first, and the patient continues no, this is what I want. I will pay for it, but I want the celiac panel done. And lo and behold, they had celiac disease. So I think there is something worth it there where you're like, I'm pretty sure I would just feel better, at least, if we ran the test for this disease. Now, sometimes people are going to look on Google and go to the rarest disease that they can find. That there is a little bit of balancing act that has to be done here. But I think that just flat out no weighing your patients, one, even if they don't weigh, if you're morbidly obese, you can see it on you. So that doesn't really, this is just more symbolic so they can't document it than anything. Like, it's just more of a way of where they can't have the documentation to pass on to other providers. I don't think that this is the answer. I think that there can be something to be said for asking your doctor to explore something else in the meantime while you work on losing weight, because losing the weight can help the condition, especially if it's musculoskeletal. I say this all the time, but especially if it's musculoskeletal, losing weight will probably help. But there are times when it's not that, and if you are a well-informed patient and you're not necessarily jumping to something completely off the wall, I think it is worth advocating to get like the blood test panel, or some sort of testing done if it's not too invasive and that sort of thing. And this whole thing of that you shouldn't have to advocate for yourself. Here's the thing, and I feel like people forget it a lot. Doctors are human. Doctors do the best that they can with the information that they have at the time. You withholding some of that information by saying you can't weigh me doesn't help your circumstance overall. I'd be really surprised to see like the uptick in medical care visits because people don't weigh themselves, they don't get the advice, they don't get anything documented for weight loss, and so these situations continue to be perpetuated and get worse, which results in more doctor visits. I'd just be curious. But we're going to end it here. Things have not gone as planned this weekend. I don't even know if I'm going to get a second video recorded. And I'm just I'm running at lightning speed today. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.